Hey vinyl lovers, welcome back to Vinyl Latte, where we sit down, have a cup of joe, and talk about records. Today's going to be a little bit different. Normally I come on and I tell you about my latest hauls, my latest acquisitions, things that I've picked up, and it's not going to be that way. I'm actually going to partake in the latest vinyl community trend of this summer vinyl tag. Now let me tell you a little bit about it. You might have already seen this from your favorite channel where they're answering 20 questions about their record collection. I think it's about 20 questions. Really, I think there's one or two that are just general record collector questions, but majority of the questions are around items in your collection. And what's fun about this for being a YouTube creator is it allows us to pull things out of the collection that maybe we haven't shown yet or haven't had a reason to share. So for me, it was a kind of a creative and fun exercise. I will be honest, I wasn't gonna partake. I have so much content packed for you guys, several videos. I'm in the process of reviewing some things for y'all. I have a pile of new hauls here. I got another pile down here. There's so many cool things upcoming that I wanted to get the content that I have now before partaking in some of this community stuff. And also I felt like I was too new to be part of the community. I've only been here for like 3-4 months and I was like, oh, this seems to be like a community event. Everybody knows everybody and tagging everybody. And that's what happened. I got tagged. I got tagged in the community by Golden Image Music. A recent new buddy of mine, Todd, who lives in kind of the same area that I do. We ran into each other a few times at some record shows, and we got to talk and exchange some phone numbers and talking about doing some future collaboration. But he actually tagged me on his summer vinyl tag, so now I felt obligated to partake. I got called out. And if you're gonna call me out to do something or partake in something, I'm gonna step up and play. So here we go, 20 questions, digging deep into the vinyl collection, and I'm really excited, I think, to share some of these with you. The first question is, it's an album or a song with summer in its name. And I chose one album that to me has an iconic track on here that just perfectly captures the summer vibe, gives you that feel good, laid back feel every time you put it on. It's very nostalgic to me. I remember when I was younger and I would get out of school, and I would crank this up on the radio, especially when it was time for like summer break. So for me, I'm sharing with you something that is nostalgic to me. Really love the song, and it's actually a really great album. This is DJ Jazzy Jeff and a Fresh Prince. This is Home Base, a fantastic album in its own, but it has the song Summertime. That song by DJ Jazzy Jeff is probably one of the all-time best songs ever written by him and published and produced. It also has Ring My Bell, Trapped on the Dance Floor, Who Stole the DJ, You Saw My Blinker, which, quite frankly, that was a strong song back then. We all wonder why he went ahead and slapped somebody, but if you listen to the lyrics, if you saw my blinker, you realize it was kind of in him the whole time. A really, really great album. Separate the artist from the music, I guess, but really great album. Okay, the second question is latest heavy pull. So this is supposed to be an album that you really, went into your pocket to kind of be able to get. And as some of you may know, if you follow this channel recently, I've been acquiring some Electric Recording Company albums, and I recently just got the latest one. So to me, this is it. This is the one that meets that criteria just because they're so freaking expensive. So this is Schubert and Bridge playing piano and cello, some very cool classical, chamber classical music. It is actually a great album to just stream if you're not familiar with classical music, or maybe you want to give it a little bit of a dips and a dabs into it. Go ahead and give this a stream. It's actually a really nice album, well put together. Now, ask me if it's worth the level of investment, that's for a future video. We'll talk about that. But this is definitely the latest album I had to open my wallet, pocketbook, whatever you want to call it, up for. Okay, the third question on the list is Whack-A-Mole. And this is a random album, completely chosen by not knowing, like blind chosen. And it plays homage to Mazzy's channel. Mazzy has a fantastic channel where he talks a lot about jazz, but he'll talk about some rock as well. And he does this video, he's been doing this series where he calls it Whack-A-Mole, where he'll just grab 3 albums, 4 albums, or however many it is, and pull them out and talk to you about them. So I'm not going to run around and grab an album. What I am going to do is use Discogs, and I'm going to go ahead and hit random item, and boom, I don't even know what it is yet, but that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, it's UB40, Labor of Love. Let me go grab that. UB40, Labor of Love, this is the Japanese pressing, and you know, this is UB40, this album I think is more Main Street reggae. It's got a lot of great songs on here. The big one that you probably know is Red Red Wine. Red Red Wine to Make Me Feel So Fine. That's this album. That's on here. Great song. Another song that I feel really defined me growing up. I used to play that song on repeat all the time. Used to love it. Probably one of the tracks that really got me into reggae, again, being sort of a growing up where the 90s music was very influential. This track being one that hit me early, and then you had Snow and Pharma and a bunch of other things, plus the whole Marley stuff that was really out and being played that time. So great time to be introduced to some reggae music, but this is a wonderful album to give a spin or give a stream. And if you haven't ever heard of Red Red Wine, this, and it's true because I know there's a lot of young people get into music and maybe you don't know that song, I highly recommend you giving it a stream. I think if you like reggae, it's a good commercial reggae song. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I remember hanging out with people and, you know, you get to a party and have a couple drinks and it was like Red Red Wine would come out and everybody would start singing the song, you know. Kind of brings back a little memories of my youth, I guess. The next question is an album cover with an animal on it. And I thought of this album first, so that's why I grabbed it. But then I was thinking like Year of the Cat. I also just picked up Heart's Animal, so I was going to share that one with you. But then I was like, no, I'm going to go with my first pick because it's what came to my mind first. And I thought that was the fair thing to do. And that is Elvis Costello and the Attractions. This is Armed Forces. And it is a great album, new wave and kind of punk kind of meshed together. So very kind of new style rock at the time. Very, very excellent songwriter. If you're not familiar with Elvis Costello, he's a fantastic songwriter. But I really love this cover. This cover art of the elephants is just, it's always stuck in my mind since the first time I ever saw this album. I really love the artwork here. It's one of those pictures to me that I would actually like buy this painting or at least think about buying this if I saw it in a real painting, right? It's just such a beautifully done cover. And I will give MoFi credit here. They did a really great job with the printing of this color. It is very impressive. So that's mine with an animal on the cover. Okay, so the next album is an album with a great story. And I chose this pressing of ABBA's Voulez-Vous. And if you're not familiar, this is kind of ABBA's disco when they were kind of at like the peak of their disco era. This was recorded in Miami and Stockholm, so it's got an interesting recording history behind it. But the reason this made the list is because, let me give you some background here. So my wife is European. She's from Romania. I'm going to bring up a Romanian album or two on this list just to kind of introduce you all to some new music that I think you might actually enjoy. That type of family is usually when you haven't seen them in a while, they always give you gifts. Well, her brother and his fiance both live in Sweden. So when I met with them, I think it's been 2 years now since we last got together, or maybe it's a year. I'm bad with this stuff. My wife keeps me straight. When we actually met with them in Europe, they came and gave me a bunch of ABBA albums because they're a Swedish band, and it was kind of homage to their country, and it gave me these albums from there. So this is really cool for me. So this is, it's nice. It's a nice story behind it, and I'm really happy to have that as part of the collection because it means something to me. It's not just a great album, especially if you love ABBA, but it also means something to me because it was given to me by a family member. So I'm really happy to have that a part of the collection. Okay, question number 6 is an album we would be surprised to see in your collection, and this is another one. First of mine that if I think I had some of my mates here and they were taking a look, they were flipping through, they'd be like, what the heck? What is this? Why do you have this? Or they might even say, didn't even know this existed. And that's RuPaul's Supermodel of the World. This is his or hers breakout album into Main Street culture. It's kind of a lot of... It's a fun album. I'll be honest with you. It's an absolutely fun album filled with some great just like dance music, if you will. Got some great beats on here. And I think it's a surprise to see in the collection just because of the, kind of transgender and LBTQ plus, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anything, but nature of this, especially coming from a straight married man, seeing this in the collection. So, I have no bias. I mean, good music is good music. This is a good album. If you haven't heard it yet, or if you're even remotely curious, give it a try. I think opening up your musical taste and not going into certain things with a bias really helps you build a more well-rounded collection, but actually you experience a lot better music when you really can have an open mind to things and really experience new types of things that you really wouldn't dive into. So that's definitely one that I think my mates would be surprised if they came over and really dug through the collection to see. Question 7 is cheapy, and it says, this is a cheap, possibly dollar bin record that is really worth owning and listening to. And this was a $1 record for me, and I do think it's a good record to have in your collection, and I do think it's a quintessential album, rock album from the 70s. I was surprised to see it for $1, especially in the condition that it is, which you'll see in a minute is almost perfect for being an old pressing. And that is Pablo Cruise, Worlds Away. This is great, man. This has got smooth vocals, catchy hooks. It's just a fantastic album throughout. One of those albums you could just put on a turntable and just, kind of rock out to, if you will. I really, really like this album. I really like Pablo Cruise's work in general. I got several of his albums in my collection, so I'm a happy listener, happy fan, if you will. But this album here is definitely one I think meets that criteria. If you're looking for a good dollar bin record, if you see some Pablo Cruise in there like I did, go ahead and snatch them up. I think you'll be really happy. Question 8 is a 45 or alternative format, and this was a little bit tough because there's so many 45s now being pressed. So I really took this to heart as the old classic 7-inch 45s, not any of the new AP stuff or the new records that are coming out that are 45 double LPs. I think that would be a cop-out. I wanted to stick to the actual format itself, the 7-inch with the big hole, and I wanted to find something fun to share with you. I had a couple choices. I liked showing sometimes quirky things. I figure since we're getting out of the norm and we're showing some things that we normally wouldn't show, let's keep that flow. And I wanted to share this with y'all because I feel like this is a particular single that you may not know, or maybe you have heard it and didn't know who sung it. A lot of people believe that Jimmy Buffett is the artist. The music sounds very Jimmy Buffett-ish, and it sounds like Jimmy Buffett singing, and I've even had parrot heads swear that it's Jimmy Buffett, but it's not. it's a different person. And that is Fred August Campbell. This is August and the Spur of the Moment. This is a double single here. It's got two different songs on it. The first song is Lost Horizons, which, you know, whatever. But the reason I have this is actually for, I'll let you read that, but this is the I-95 song. And if you're not familiar with the I-95 song and you're somebody who has a license and drives on the highway, I highly recommend you pause this video and go search August, Fred Campbell or August, and type in the I-95 song. I think you'll be really in a treat. It's a great, quirky song, a lot of fun. Great thing to play when you just have one of those moments where, you know, somebody just cut you off or is driving like an idiot and you're just like, you want to deal with that situation. It's a great, great song to put on. I'll make you laugh about the situation. Okay, question number 9 is not a record one. It is one of the I think 2 that are non-record questions, and that is your favorite music documentary or biopic. I really thought about this. This is hard. There's a lot of great documentaries out there. When you think about artists, there's so many wonderful documentaries out there with artists. I mean, just you could go on for days. And then you can get into things about the music industry. You can get into some of the collaboration stuff that was done. I mean, there's just so much good movies out there to choose from. But the one that I seem to play more often than not, that I revisit probably a couple times a year, and I think I've watched it 3 times this year alone, just because, and I'll explain to you why, but let me reveal what it is. Documentary I'm referring to is Vinyl Nation. Now, some of you're like, oh, of course, Vinyl Nation. That is that's the answer that everybody would say. I'm going to dive into my reasons why I chose that here in a moment. But if you haven't watched this at all, if this is new to you, if you never heard of Vinyl Nation before, maybe you're new to collecting records and you're getting into the hobby, even more so why you would want to go watch this documentary. Because what they do is they have an assortment of these record collectors, and they walk through things like Record Store Day. They walk through kind of the vinyl revival. They talk about their collection, what their collection means to them, etc. And I think the reason why this video or this documentary has hit me so much is because it's so true to what I feel life is like as a record collector. The way that we curate our collections, the way we feel about them, a way that every album has a story, a way that on Record Store Day you literally put together a plan, and then you do only tend to see the Record Store Day people at Record Store Day, and you become friends with them even though you only see them maybe twice a year. It hits all of those things, and I think the reason I watch it a lot is because you can relate to the people that are on that video. They're very relatable. There's so many different personalities. You will find somebody to relate to if you're in this hobby. The other thing I would mention is just frankly, like, I always catch something new. Every time I watch it, I catch something new in somebody's collection, or I catch something new in a video that I just didn't see before. So there's a lot going on. Not in a bad way, not like it's confusing, like ADD confusing, but there's just a lot of content in there to digest. And I think it's one of those documentaries that you enjoy the first time, you appreciate the second time, and you love it the third, and always going on. So that's just kind of my take on it. Vinyl Nation to me is the one that comes to mind just because I play it the most. Okay, number 10, we're halfway there, is the box set. So a box set, and as you can see, I have tons of box sets behind me, which you can see off camera is I have 4 more cubes of box sets up here, and I have some tucked away other places. So I have a lot of box sets. So this one was a little bit tough for me. The way I picked this one was, what box set do I listen to the most? Which one do I grab the most? Now, I'll tell you a little bit of a secret. I tend to take my records out of the box set because if they're separate and they're on the wall, I listen to them more. I'll grab them more. You know, I'll pull an album out because it's easy to get to. Sometimes I don't want to be messing with pulling out a box and unpacking it and going through all the records and stuff. It's too much hassle. So a little bit of a tip there, if you're getting into collecting, is sometimes you could take your records out. Now I put all of them in a sleeves. I treat them like a normal record, right? An individual record. I put them in a nice sleeve and everything. And what I do is I put a sticker on the back that tells me that it's part of that collection and how many records are in that collection. So if it's 8 records, I'll put 1/8, and the next one I'll do 2/8, so on. So then I know it's part of that set. So if I ever want to put that set back together again, I can just grab all the records. I know exactly which pressings they are, which is helpful when you start collecting multiple pressings of albums. That's an easy way to be able to know which one belonged in the set and which one didn't. But the set that I grabbed the most is Thelonious Monk's Riverside Session, or Tenor Sessions, Riverside Tenor Sessions. This is a wonderful box set. This is the original pressing. This is the first press of this by Acoustic Sounds Analog Productions. This is the one where you have the actual real albums. They didn't come with just the prints, of them. You actually had all the cardboard sleeves and everything for them all. The sound quality on these are phenomenal. The best I have actually heard of any of these albums. I have several pressings of some of these in my collection, and these are always by far the ones that I go to the most. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got, what is this? 4, 5, 6, 7 albums included from the Riverside collection. So this is just a really fantastic box set to me. I'm really happy to have this, and luckily this was something I scored before the price went bonkers. This is now a super expensive box set, but I was very fortunate to grab it when it was still very reasonable to grab, and I'm so glad I did because it sounds phenomenal, and I'm really happy to have it. Okay, number 11 is the most trash record in your collection. Okay, so this was kind of tough for me. I don't collect trash records. If it's not VG plus, and my grading of VG plus tends to be a lot stricter than most. I kind of follow the gold mine rules almost to the T. I don't add it to my collection. I just have too much invested in my hardware and my cartridge and everything else to buy records that I'm not going to play. Because I wouldn't take a crapped record, a scratch to heck record, and put it on my turntable. It's just, I won't do it. And, I got friends who are like, oh, why don't you get a secondary table, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, why do I need to listen? Why don't I just find a good copy of the record? Why do I need to listen to a scratched up record, one that skips and stuff like that? Now, some other folks, they don't care. They're just grateful to have the music, or they're grateful to have the art, or whatever the case is. But I don't really collect them, so I don't have a lot of those in my collection. But here's the exception. I mentioned earlier that my wife is Romanian. And one of the things that Romanians do, as I mentioned, is when you go visit them, they'll give you gifts. Well, one of the things that happened is her whole side of the family knew that I collect records. They found out that I collect records. And they ended up going back and grabbing all of their records that they had from all these different family members. And it's all this like Romanian classic music. Like it's just stuff that's just been out of print since the 70s. And it's never been repressed, right? For whatever reasons. I don't know if it's a licensing thing or these people just aren't relevant anymore. But I have this whole assortment of records of this like classical, not classical in a sense that we think classical, but like classic Romanian style music, right? And some of those records, they really weren't treated well. They were thrown in a bin or in some garage, or they were, whatever. And so I have some that definitely seen better days. And one of those records is this one. I want to give you, this is the grading wise in Discogs. This is my worst rated album from a cover standpoint and record standpoint, but I wanted to at least share it with you. So this is Maria Cornesco, she, which is and, Nilu Balasoyan. I don't know. I don't speak Romanian. That's my wife's job. But Maria's album here, Maria and Nilu. How about we say that? Maria and Nilu's album. And let me show you the condition of this. So you can see, I'm going to keep it in here. You can see that this album cover has seen better days, right? It's missing pieces down here. It's got a hole in it. It's got a little funk rolling on there. But the other side of this is the record itself has definitely seen better days. I don't know if this is going to come in, but it's very dull. It's got a lot of vibrations to it. Like, I would never drop my needle on this album. It's the reason I keep these albums in my collection is because they're a part of her family. I mean, these are albums that were owned by folks in her family that are not even around anymore. They've long and gone, passed away. And this is sort of a remembrance of them. Some of them actually have names written on the label of who they used to be owned to, and it's part of families. So couldn't bear to get rid of them. Normally records like that I wouldn't even keep in my collection, but because they're from her family, I have to keep them. And I'm trying to preserve them the way that they are, as long as I possibly can, right? If they start getting really, really bad or start deteriorating too much or causing problems, then we'll deal with that. But I'm trying to prolong the life of them as much as possible. Okay, so the next one is a local band, and the one that I chose is, within, as the crow flies, about an hour from where I live, and that is Ben Folds. And this is What Matters Most, his most recent release, as far as I'm aware of anyway. And this was actually, it's cool, it's got the autograph on here, so this is the autograph edition that was exclusive to Barnes & Noble. And Ben's Folds, this particular album, I think is Ben's return to form. He really feels like his returning kind of to that style of his earlier work, blending like wit and emotion into the lyrics and the songwriting here. It's a good album. It's a fun album. And if you like the old Ben Folds 5, then I think you're really going to enjoy this album. Okay, number 13, an album from a far away land. All right. Well, I thought about a couple things here. So there's a series of records. I'm trying to collect the whole discography of a certain band in Australia called Something for Kate. And I was going to show those off because they're kind of a cool rock band. They're known locally in Australia. Their albums are pressed in, I think, Australia. Like, you just can't really get them in the United States unless you're importing them in or somebody came from Australia to the United States with them. They're just hard records to get. I also thought about things like Toto Cutugno from Italy and some of the records that he has. But I did want to do my wife justice, and I'm sorry this is the third time I mentioned something Romanian, but this is one that I hope that you actually go listen to. This is just beautiful music. Soft, velvety voice, almost delicately sprinkled on top of the music, like Jimmy's on a Sunday. It's just something that you put on at night, and you'll see the cover here in a moment, but the way that the cover's designed sets the mood of this perfectly. It's an album that you drop the needle on after a long day, and you're ready to unwind. You don't want anything that's too harsh or too, forceful. Maybe something you don't have to focus too much on because you're probably, unless you speak Romanian, you're probably not going to understand the language anyway. And if you're somebody who goes to international music, maybe you listen to like French music or Italian music, and even though you don't understand the language, you love the beauty of the sound, you love the beauty of the music. That's what this is. And this is Paulina's Prin Lume. A fantastic album. I mean, it really is a beautifully done album. And this is one that you can go ahead and stream. So this is streamable. I think it's on Spotify, or I can't remember if it's on Tidal or Qobuz, but I also think you can get it from there as well. I really, really recommend you give this a try if you want to experience something new. My only recommendation is I'm not a fan of track 1. It's the only song on here I think doesn't fit the whole feeling of the album. Maybe you'll feel differently, but all the other tracks on this album after track 1 to me are just a wonderful album. It's well put together. It's beautiful music. I think I might even like side B more than I like side A, but I wanted to share that with you to really get something going for you that you might not be thinking of. I am almost certain most viewers had never heard this album, but would likely add this album or add it to their streaming list as if they actually gave it a try. So that's what I wanted to give you. I wanted to give you something that you can go and enjoy and experience and maybe not have thought of before. So the next question, number 14, is a soundtrack. And this one was tough because gosh, there is a lot of great soundtracks out there. And I was thinking, where do you go here, right? Do you do Saturday Night Fever, which has like, it's pretty much to me, the Bee Gees. When I think of the Bee Gees, is the songs are from that album. And then you got, Forrest Gump, which, man, I mean, that's a double LP that just has so many great tracks on it. It's one that you can spin for days. It's got so many great classical rock songs on there that it's just so well put together. And then you have other things like Top Gun, which also has a lot of cool hits. Cocktail soundtrack is another great one, too. Cool Tom Cruise movies, and then you got the whole Guardians of the Galaxy, right? They got awesome soundtracks, and then some folks really like the Stranger Things. So this was really, really tough. So I chose the one I think that for me had the most music on there that I don't already have full-length albums of, that I like to listen to, that I've adapted some of the songs on the soundtrack into some of my playlists so I can jam out to it when I'm in a car. And I'll actually listen to this soundtrack, a couple times a year. It's got a cool just playlist. It's an awesome playlist. It's 29 songs. And that is the Baby Driver soundtrack. This is a wonderful movie. If you're into action or if you're into music, this is a great movie. I'll talk about that here in a second. There's so many awesome bands on here, Blur, etc. Like, it's just such a great mix of songs that it's hard not to give this a spin. And if you've never seen this movie before and you like action movies and you're into music because you're watching this channel, this is wonderful. Wonderful movie. They actually created this playlist and filmed the movie around it. So the characters are moving to the beat of the music, and not in a corny way. It's done very, very well. But like, I'll give you an example. There's like a gun, shootout scene, and there's drums playing, and every time the drum hits, the guns are shooting, right? Like, it's on beat to the music. So it's really, really cool. It's really funky. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, give it a go. It plays like, the movie plays like a soundtrack. So it's really cool. I think you'll dig it. Okay, your highest recommendation. Okay, this was a good one, because what do you mean by my highest recommendation? Do you mean, an album that, like, I'm going to recommend to somebody to collect, or do you want me to go like audiophile and demo album, and what I think, gives the best sound? Like, this had some lack of clarity to it, but I think it's open to interpretation. So I really thought about this, and I was thinking, man, I could go with demo albums. The Bill Withers stuff is really great. You can get into a lot of the AP75 stuff. Sounds fantastic. UHQRs, of course. There's some great albums there. I got some Mo-Fis that I think sound killer. The Rhino Hi-Fi stuff, you can make some recommendations there. But like, when I really thought about what's my highest recommendation, I thought about what I recommend the most. And what I recommend the most is a jazz artist. It's a little bit older jazz artist, kind of under the radar. It's not your big Coltrane's or your Miles Davises or anything. Is Gabor Szabo. And this album is Bacchanal. And to me, this is an awesome album. It's a unique fusion of jazz and rock put together. And it's got, like these exotic and psychedelic sounds. And it's fantastic that this is the 68 Capital City US pressing. It's in fantastic condition. It sounds like a dream. It really does kick. And I just really like Gabor Szabo. I think he's a fantastic musician. I've turned a lot of people on to him. Right now, you can pick up his album Dreams from a lot of places. There's Vinyl Me Please did a repress, I think about a year ago. and then you have it just reissued in general. I think you could pick it up on Amazon, or maybe your local can get it for you. That's also a really great album. But when I think about what is my favorite in the collection, it's Bacchanal. And this is one that I would recommend if you like jazz and if you like guitar-based jazz. Pick this up. Give it a stream at least, okay? Do that for yourself. Do that for your ears. Go ahead and pop that on your headphones and give it a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay. The next one is the highest on your want list. Gosh, there's a lot of stuff on my want list. I have, I think, it's over 1,000. It's probably close to 1,200 albums on my want list. And some of them are just, to me, more different pressings of albums that I have, but a lot of them are just new music, things that I've listened to, got recommendations for, and for me, like, I love listening to albums. When somebody says, hey, you know, that Bacchanal album is killer, I'm like, great, let me go pick it up. I'll add it to my want list. You know, and eventually sometimes, like when I'm traveling stuff, I'll go through my want list and like, okay, really, this was a recommendation, so let me go ahead and stream it. But a lot of times that's how I discover new music, is people recommend something, I put it to my want list, and eventually I pick it up. Now I like hunting in the wild, so I could easily just go online and buy this stuff, but some of the stuff I don't want to. You know, I got some things on there, maybe $5, but I won't go pick them up because I want to find them in the wild. To me, the hunt is fun. I mention all that because this is hard for me. When you have a huge want list like that, where do you go? I'm a completionist. I got collections I haven't completed. The Bob Dylan MoFi series, I'm still missing a handful of albums from there. I've been collecting the Santana MoFi series. I'm collecting all the UHQRs. I got a couple of them that I'm missing right now. I think I'm missing 3 or 4 to be able to complete that collection. So I thought about that, and then, you know, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll go, you know, I've been nostalgic this whole time. Let me go nostalgic with you and mention something like ICP, right? There's Insane Clown Posse, I know. But I have a couple albums I'm trying to collect. I was into ICP when I was younger. What are you going to do? But I've been, for nostalgic reasons, I've been going back and collecting all those albums. And I think there's 1 or 2 that I'm missing from that discography. So I thought about, I'll mention that. The way I ended up coming to, I spent too long on trying to figure this out. So the way I came to it is, let me just see what the most expensive item on my want list is, because that's probably highest on my want list, because I don't think it's going to be getting cheaper anytime soon. And boy, was I blown away. So the album that I chose was the Beatles' Let It Be Naked. And the current pressing, apparently, that I have selected is on sale right now in Discogs for like over $11,000. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. I don't even know. Now, I will say it's probably cheaper than the item that is on my want list that's not on my want list. I would love to one day own the classic records, Led Zeppelin, you know, the box, right? The row kit box. I think that would be cool. But that is the price of an automobile today. So I had it on my want list, but eventually when it started getting to like tens of thousands of dollars, I removed it because I knew I would never spend that much money on that box set. You know, maybe we could talk a couple grand, but I'm not gonna. If it comes to buying a car or buying a couple albums, I'm at a position right now I would buy that car. Actually, I would probably buy more hi-fi gear, but that's a whole different conversation. So yeah, the Beatles, Let It Be Naked. That's the one I think right now is the highest on my list. Unless you have a classic records Led Zeppelin kit that you want to give me, we can talk. All right, so the next question, number 17, is a channel shout out. And as I mentioned before, that's how I got involved in doing this. I was called out or shout out by the Golden Image Music. I'm going to include a link in the description to their channel, so be sure to check them out. Todd's really cool. Their channel is really fun. He does a lot of interview style, kind of like Zoom meeting styles, where him and his buds will get together and just talk about music. They'll talk about certain albums. They'll talk about a lot of cool concepts. They just did one recently about kind of like fake bands. So they're bands that were made in movies that almost feel real, that you would go see or want to go see their concert, but they're fictitious, right? They're not real bands. They were just made up for the movie. And that's a really fun episode because he's right. There's a lot of fantastic bands that are made in movies that you would want to go see. So it's a really fun channel. I recommend seeing them. But in the spirit of calling out somebody new, I really think I thought about what to do here. There's a lot of great channels out there, and I actually follow a lot of channels that are around my size, more on the smaller size, because I feel like we should all support each other as we continue to grow. And then it got me thinking, I want to be bold here. I'm an itty bitty channel. I'm new. Barely anybody knows who I am. And I just thought, life is full of ambition. Life is full of opportunities. Life is full of things that if you don't take the chance, you never know what happens. So I'm going to be bold and call out one of the mega channels that I haven't seen do a summer vinyl tags yet, and actually has a question inspired by him, and that is Norman Mazzy's channel. I'm going to go ahead and call him out, and I'm going to tell you why I'm calling him out. It's not because I'm hoping that Mazzy calls me out, because honestly, you and I both know he'll never see this video, and even if he clicked on it, he's not going to get this far. But I'm calling it out because it is a wonderful channel. And I really love Mazzy's presentation on the way that he shares music knowledge. I look up to the way that he presents the information. He's such a knowledgeable guy. Like, I feel like I could just have a cup of coffee with him and just get lost in his words forever. He's really, really that great in getting into the details of certain pressings or the history of bands. I love when he goes back into like the history of bands and goes through the catalogs. And then he also has a lot of fun. He did a whole video just on his espresso machine, and me being Vinyl Latte, like, how could I not watch that video? He's also done videos in black and white, right? Just to kind of change things up and keep things creative. So always inventing yourself when you're a big channel, I think, is really key. And I think he has a really deep appreciation for records, for music. He has an amazing CD collection as well. And, he shares a lot. He really opens his home. He films in multiple different locations in his house. So you kind of get to know who he is as a person by taking in how he decides to surround himself with his belongings in his home. And I don't know, I just feel like he's a really cool guy. And if you haven't been turned on to his channel yet, which you likely have, but if you haven't, look up Norman Maslov, look up Mazzy's channel. I think you'll be really surprised. It's one of the few channels that I literally watch every video that comes out. I don't have a lot of channels, like I say. There's channels I watch most of the stuff, but even if it's a topic I'm not that like, I don't know, it's not a band I really care for, I'll still watch it because Mazzy's knowledge and the knowledge I gained from him just watching that video is just, there's nobody else like it. Okay, we're getting near the end. I think this is the last question that doesn't relate to a record, and then the last two questions are record questions. So hang in there if you're still wanting to see some records. And the number 18 is A Silver Lining in Vinyl. And this is, from what I understand, this is supposed to be like, what's good about being part of this, this community or being a vinyl collector in today's world. And, I could go here on for a lot of things, right? The revival has allowed repressings of hard to find or albums that haven't been pressed in a long time, right? We just got the 30th anniversary pressing of Blues Traveler 4, for an example. And some of you might not care, but I really like that album. And I'm glad that it's been repressed and it was done with care. It sounds wonderful. But there's other albums too that are just rare albums that it's hard to find an OG, or at least if you do find one, sometimes they're scratched to heck. And, being able to have a repressed album with today's mastering, with today's pressing technology, done at some of these pressing plants like QRP, RTI, Palace, and a bunch of other ones, right? You just get some premium products today. And then on course, because of the revival, 2-channel and the technology and hardware have gone up. There's so much investment in 2-channel hardware that the level of equipment we're getting these days is just phenomenal. So there's a lot of all of that I was thinking about talking about, which I guess I kind of did. But the one thing that I gotta say that is really the silver lining in vinyl has been this channel. And I don't mean that as a shameless plug. What I mean is that this community, for the most part, because you always have your hecklers and that's fine, that's in any community. But for the most part, it's been so welcoming. I've been getting up early and meeting with folks in Australia and having webinar conversations with them. I've talked to people in London. I've talked to people in just other places. I've talked to people in the States. I've met one of my all-time idols in life, Michael Fremer, and had a whole cup of coffee with him, and just was a fantastic thing. And it's just that welcomeness, that warmth and welcome that you get from this community, the vinyl community, has just been amazing. I've been a part of communities before, car communities and gaming communities and all of that stuff, but I never felt as welcomed into a community, especially being a new guy, as I have until now, until the vinyl community. So for all of you that have taken the time to comment and interact and, give good wishes and positivity, knowing that, hey, I'm only been doing this for a couple months. I'm still learning. There's still a lot of things I'm going to figure out as we go down this journey together, but been patient with me through all of this stuff and been supportive and shared and I don't know. I'm a part of these Discord groups, and some folks, they seek me out in Discord. So they are too shy to, I guess, leave a comment on the video, but they'll private message me on Discord. And I've talked to a lot of folks through Discord, just talking about life, community, records, hardware, all that kind of fun stuff. So the community, thank you for being just such an awesome community. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for allowing me to feel like I have friends in other places other than, my house and my cats. Thank you. Thank you for being a lovely group of people. You really mean it to me. I mean, that's the silver lining. It's the friendships that have started and fostered because of this. Thank you. Okay, we get 2 more to go. Steal of the Deal. This is an album that you picked up, from what I understand, you picked up cheap. It's worth more than what you kind of paid for it, but it's also a good album, right? It's got to be, you didn't just buy it just to buy it because it was cheap, but it's also a good album. This is one of them. This was an album that my wife and I were out digging for records, and my wife has a very unique way of looking for records. She shops by album covers. Album covers that interest her, that's what she picks. Like we've already mentioned a few times, this is not her home country. So when she's here, she doesn't know a lot of the American bands because they just never hit Romania. So when she goes record shopping with me, she picks things that look interesting. And then she'll hand them to me and say, what do you think of these? One of them I ended up going with because it was fairly inexpensive. I think it was less, it was like $20 or something like that, which is pretty cheap for a record these days. And this album on Discogs, let me pull it up here. So keep in mind, I paid $20 or whatever it was for this, maybe $24.99. This album right now on the high side sells for $432. The average selling price is $137. I'm looking at Discogs on the side of my screen. So high value record for something that was like $20. If you like hard rock or proto punk rock, this is for you. You're gonna like this album, and that is Colored Balls, Ball Power. This is raw energy, man, pressed into some plastic, man. This is just crazy album. And like I said, this is like, I mean, it is in mint condition. It doesn't look like it was ever touched or played. It looked like somebody maybe just went ahead and cracked open the seal. Pretty clean record. It was in great shape. I don't know why it was so cheap. I think that maybe whoever had it priced didn't realize what they had, or maybe there was something that happened that spiked the price of this and they priced it maybe at fair market value when they had it, or it was a record that was just sitting for a long time. But it's a cool record. It's definitely a steal of a deal. It was a surprise. You know, when I got it home, I did some reading about the band and I streamed a song or two while we were there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get into this. Let's pick it up. I'd be honest with you, I didn't know anything about them when we bought the record. I just kind of previewed it when I'm at the record store, which is sometimes just what I do when I'm looking at something new. I'll listen to a track or two and say, is this for me or not? So we ended up picking it up, and it is really great. It's from Australia. This is an Australia band. And if you're not familiar with it, but you like hard rock, man, Colored Balls, Ball Power, give it a go. Kind of fun album. All right, this is the last but not least. And I say not least because, as always, I'm going to have a lot more records for you to share on this channel. So if you've enjoyed this so far, if you like talking about records, go ahead, man. Follow me, whatever, because this is what we do. I do a lot of haul videos. I go through a bunch of albums like this. Typically, I'll give you more history of the albums themselves, and I'll tell you more about the pressings and how they sound. This is a little bit different because we're addressing the questions from the vinyl. Summer Vinyl Tag, but I really appreciate you sticking in here so far. Thank you for making it to the end, and I hope that this last album was worth it to you. This is one that I think is worth it to me. It brings a smile to my face, as you can see, because first off, I'm a fan of the band. The second off, I think this is just a cool pressing, and I'm super excited to share it with you. So the last question is a promo. You're supposed to show a promo record, and I had a lot. I was surprised to see how many promo records are in my collection. I went to Discogs and just typed in promo in my collection and just to see what would come up versus digging through all of them. And I was like, holy crap, man, there's a lot of promo records here. So I thought that was really cool. But when I was scrolling, it was like the second one from the top. I'm like, yeah, that's it, because this is a recent acquisition for me. And I just like it. I really do like the album. And I'm a fan of the band. And that is Alchemy by Dire Straits. This is the live record. This is the Japanese press, as you can tell by the Obi strip. This was one of the records I got from my massive Florida haul. If you haven't seen that, man, that was a $2,000+ haul where I traveled through all of these different cities and in towns in Florida and just went record shopping, and I tell you about the record place and I tell you what albums I got, etc. And this was one of them. And this is a really, really just cool pressing to me because it's just cool. It's first off, it's so clean, so crisp for being from '84. And then what's also super cool is that the record is clean. It is super, super clean. Let me show you. So it's a white label promo. Little hair, sorry. So white label promo, and the record was brand new. I mean, it's clean. It's double LP. And it sounds great. I'm happy with this as a collection. So when this opportunity came up to show off, like, this is my cool little promo right now that I wanted to share with you. So hopefully that was fun. Hopefully you really enjoyed this series. I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun for me to go back into the collection and dig out some things that, quite frankly, I haven't really pulled out in a while. I haven't really put much thought about it. I think the randomization of the UB40 album was really cool because that's another nostalgia. I feel like this was a whole bunch of nostalgia on this particular episode, and I really appreciate you sticking with me. Thanks again. I'm going to go ahead and grab myself a cup of joe, and I'm going to see you on the next video.